अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to this episode of Hafta from an extremely news-packed week. We're recording this on Thursday, the 8th of May, and as you can imagine, most of this Hafta, if not all, will be discussing the violence and I don't know whether we should call it a war or a confrontation with Pakistan.
The worst escalation, I think you can call it,
Escalation,
in
yes, the
recent
escalation, the
years.
escalating violence. But it is a very fast evolving situation. So by the time
Yeah.
this episode goes out, much may have changed, hopefully for the better and for the more peaceful. That is my view. Let me introduce the panel first. In the studio, Shardool, Katyayan, who is with us after a couple of weeks, I guess.
Yes, couple of weeks. Hello.
Manisha Pande,
Hello.
Raman Kirpal.
Hello.
Joining us from Chennai is Jayashree Arunachalam.
Hello.
And our subject expert, the guest joining us from Mohali, Punjab, is Brigadier Kuldip Singh. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Privileged to be with you all.
So many of our audience may already be familiar with the Brigadier, but we have a formality of always introducing our guests. Brigadier Kuldip Singh retired from the Indian Armed Forces. He was formerly an ex-principal director for defense at the National Security Council and Joint Intelligence Committee, the Prime Minister's office, and a former senior consultant at the NDMA and the Ministry of Home Affairs. He has also written for the Quint, Operation Sindoor, India's cross-border message is loud and calculated, and Theatre of Absurdities, Why No One Will Win an Indo-Pak War. The link for both is in the show notes below. You can click on the link and read the Brigadier's articles, and you can listen to this podcast to hear his views. Before we go to the headlines, you are in Punjab, in Mohali, and just before we started recording this, Brigadier, we saw the headlines that there was a very tense night in Amritsar, at least. I think Manisha spoke to some of her friends in Chandigarh, because the headlines reported that there was some missiles that were shot down that was supposedly meant for 15 cities, and Chandigarh is one of them. Do you get that sense sitting where you are in Mohali, or is that only in Amritsar where you actually hear the blasts?
I heard about that there is something which has happened in Amritsar. There has been some explosion over there. But insofar as Chandigarh is concerned, I have heard nothing about that. And life goes on here.
Okay, so before Manish...
But what I've heard just now on the TV is that they have been, the Indian Armed Forces, the ADGPI has put out a statement that in the intervening night of 7th and 8th, that is last night, which has just passed by, the Pakistanis have tried to, attack a couple of cities on the border.
Right.
Yeah, 15 cities.
So that statement has just come in. I
Yes,
think
it
it's
has.
about
And we
10
intercepted
minutes
the
or 5 minutes
missiles.
back.
Yeah.
So that's to be taken seriously, and that may be in response to the attack which was carried out, on the terror network by the Indian Armed Forces.
Yeah, and we'll speak about that in a little more detail. But before we get to the headlines, I just want to remind our audiences that we are a completely ad-free platform. Our Press Freedom Week offer apparently is still active, although the Press Freedom Week is over. So you're a journalist with an independent media organizations. You don't take ads, unlike most others who do. You've already lost the most major source of revenue if you're an ad-free platform. You're bootstrapped but ambitious, butting heads with those in power, pursuing journalism because journalism matters. That's the day in a life of a Newslaundry reporter, a Newslaundry producer, a Newslaundry technician, a Newslaundry designer, our staff who takes care of us, all of us. So if you're watching this and you want to support us, we will make it worth your while. You buy one joint Newslaundry News Minute subscription and you get one free. So it's a 1+1, which you can give to a friend or family who does not appreciate ad-free journalism, to make them realize what a difference ad-free journalism makes. So you can scan the QR code flashing on your screen right now. You can click on the link in the show notes, and you can then become a part of the tribe that keeps journalism alive and Newslaundry alive. So thank you for that. Before we get into the discussion, can we get the headlines, which will mostly be related to the battle, I guess, Jayashree?
Yes. So first, a quick timeline of what has happened. The Indian military on Wednesday carried out strikes against terrorist camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in response to the Pahalgam terror attack. 9 sites were targeted by the Indian Armed Forces as part of Operation Sindoor. At an all-party meeting today is May 8th, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said 100 people were killed in the strikes. At least 15 people were killed meanwhile and 43 injured in cross-border shelling from the Pakistani army along the line of control. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to the NSAs of India and Pakistan respectively and reportedly urged them to keep lines of communication open and to avoid escalation. The US Embassy in Pakistan has urged Americans to avoid conflict zones, especially near the India-Pakistan border and the LOC. Then on Thursday, the Indian government said Pakistan's attempts to target military installations in 15 cities were negated. The government said Indian forces responded by targeting and neutralizing Pakistani air defense radars and systems in several locations, including Lahore. The Pakistani military has said they shot down 12 drones from India that violated its airspace. This is according to Reuters. Now, while all this was happening, our Reliance Industries Limited saw trademark registration of Operation Sindoor. Hours later, the company issued a clarification and said a junior had inadvertently done it without permission.
They got quite a bit of backlash.
There was much backlash.
Because as we are speaking, it's quite tense. With the deaths that have happened in Poonch, with the uncertainty in Punjab. So I think it comes at a very bad time. But anyway, they've said some junior is responsible for it. So
It could be.
Could be.
It's always a junior. In related news, the Ministry of Home Affairs ordered civil defense mock drills in 244 districts across the country. This exercise involved testing air raid sirens, training civilians and students, blackout procedures, camouflaging key sites, and practicing evacuation plans. This is in case of a hostile event. On television, after 2 weeks of screaming matches between Indian and Pakistani so-called security experts, the News Broadcasters and Digital Association has urged the media not to invite panelists from Pakistan.
None of them are experts.
Yeah.
I think I keep seeing these tweets from Pakistanis there that we don't know who these guys are. Who are these guys? Who have you called? And some of them are called just to be shouted at. So the first thing is, hey, Buzdil Pakistani, and that's... And then like 5 minutes of barrage of abuse and then that's it.
He gets his check and he goes home.
That's what the viewers want.
Just to add, this is a week where even the Indian right wing had to rely on Yalda Hakim and on CNN for countering Pakistan. Yes. They did it with poise, they did it very pointedly, and we had to circulate those clips from evil foreign press to make our case against Pakistan because Indian journalism only gives us memes. Right. At least what we see on our television news studios.
Right. The National Commission for Women condemned the online abuse faced by Himanshi Narwal. She's the wife of Indian Navy officer Lieutenant Vinay Narwal, who was killed in Pahalgam. This is because in her first public remarks following the attack, she made an appeal for communal harmony. She was then very viciously trolled on social media.
Yes.
I thought it was shocking. I mean, I'm not also shocked, but it was terrible.
It was very disturbing.
The Andhra Pradesh High Court ruled that members of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes who convert to Christianity cannot invoke provisions of the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act. It said the caste system is alien to the Christian faith. I would just say that even though this is a legal position, I mean, Christianity and Islam have wholesale imported the caste system. I feel like caste is that one unifying force that follows you to your grave. So I do think the courts must adapt and recognize that. So, in business news, SEBI has accused Pranav Adani, the director of several Adani Group companies, of insider trading. SEBI has alleged he shared price-sensitive information and violated regulations. Meanwhile, Bloomberg has reported that Gautam Adani is trying to convince the Donald Trump administration to drop the criminal charges against him. This is in a solar contracts bribery case. Now, 6 months before the end of his term as executive director of the IMF, India has called back K.V. Subramanian. Subramanian was formerly India's chief economic advisor. The Union Bank is now under scrutiny because it apparently decided to pre-order nearly 2 lakh copies of Subramanian's book. And this order was worth 7.25 crores. It has acknowledged lapses now in its purchase.
Well, also the publisher, which was I think Rupa, right?
Rupa publication.
Yes.
It hasn't been paid yet. They've I think got half or less than half.
They got 50%.
50%. And if they had asked me before, I would have told them whether it's legitimate or not legitimate. Working with the government, you never get paid in full. Ever.
No, but like, this should tell you that what really happens in government banks' internal circles, how they function.
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
supposed to be independent.
I have stories to tell you about how government departments function. I mean, I would probably be hauled up if I were to, because it's bizarre. But anyway, go ahead. Because I have
No, but this story came out because in December they had a board meeting and the board said we didn't ratify this 50% payment or whatever. So they asked for an inquiry. So then they hired KPMG to look into the matter. I don't know what
Yeah.
KPMG said, but that's when all this came out.
Right.
That they shadily bought this man's books.
Hmm.
So yes. Now in Punjab, the Aam Aadmi Party government passed a resolution in the Legislative Assembly. It's vowed not to spare even a single drop of water from its share for neighbouring Haryana.
Right.
After that, the Punjab and Haryana High Court directed the Punjab government and its police not to interfere with the functioning and regulation of the Bakra Nangal Dam. In Maharashtra, the Social Justice Minister has said the state government can't increase monthly financial assistance to women under the Ladki Bahin scheme to 2100. This is even though the alliance had promised this ahead of last year's assembly election. He said, however, the current amount of 1500 per month will be dispersed.
Something similar happened in Delhi, right? But they then upped it. I mean, they had made a promise, but then they said you have to register. Then
No, in Delhi, the major problem is registration.
okay.
But in this Maharashtra case, this is the first time they're finally saying that, yes, we will not fulfill
won't-
our poll
yeah, we
This
promise.
was
won't-
a
we
major
won't pay you,
plank
yeah.
for the election.
Yeah.
Exactly. This was one of the major planks that they
Huh.
fought on.
We did a story also.
Now, India and the UK have inked a free trade agreement, bringing an end to about 3 years of negotiations. Narendra Modi has described it as an ambitious and mutually beneficial free trade agreement that will help catalyze trade, investment, growth, job creation, and innovation.
Right. So those are the headlines. Thank you, Jayashree.
Yes.
Just reminding you again, do pay to keep news free. There's a QR code because when the public pays, the public is served. We want to send some of our reporters out to report and bring you a noise-free, slightly sensible version of what is happening on the ground. So do support us. We don't want those reporters to be paid from revenue that accrues from billionaires or from government ads, because then they will be unable to do their jobs serving you and they'll have to serve those who give them ads. So the QR code is here, the link is below. So
Since the whole skirmish has started, and last 2 days especially, I've got a lot of messages from people in Poonj saying that we are being ignored, mainstream media is not looking at the
Yes.
damage that's happening here.
Hmm.
No one's talking about us. So we specially want to send our reporters to
to
these areas so that we can really bring out the human stories there, what people are suffering. They've already been like 13 deaths. But I think that's a big aspect that is not been given enough
and we
attention.
think
So
of sending 3 people there?
we want to send 2 people there.
Right, 2 people. Right.
So please support this endeavor. We can send there and bring stories that you guys want to listen to and that you guys feel are being ignored.
Right. So, Brigadier Kuldip Singh, again, thank you for making the time. I have several questions for you. I'm sure the rest of the panel does as well. But to begin with, you have said neither side wants a war. At least India doesn't want a war, but you're saying neither can win a war. Which is, I'm guessing it kind of goes along the lines of the more philosophical cliche that a war has no winners, but yours is a more strategic statement. Can you explain what you mean by that?
What I had actually said was that neither side, particularly India, doesn't want a full-scale war. The strikes, like, for example, the Uri or the Balakot or, the present strikes of 7th and all that, it's okay, provided they can be managed. Now, in the past, if you have seen, somehow both countries have been able to find a common ground to manage these strikes without escalating. This time, however, the strikes have been far more, greater in intensity and number, as also in the numbers of targets.
Is there any analysis of why that is?
Yeah, because you see, these are the standard, what you call terror training camps, bases which have been hit. Like we are well aware, all my, while I was in DIA, right from the time we knew that Muridke is the headquarter of the LET, And of course, it also has been having personnel of the JUD, which they try to show as a social organization. And actually, it's the headquarters of the JUD, and there is no LET, but actually speaking, it's the LET also over there. It's also part of your larger, small little training base over there. Bahawalpur, we are well aware, Asad Mazur is there, and his JEM, is there. And the other areas which were targeted in POK, they are known places for the terrorist training camp from where these people come down to the launch pads, which, depend. Launch pads actually are movable up and down depending on where they go out. And but what has been hit are confirmed locations of terrorist training, infrastructure.
But why is it that you said that in the past, Uri and Balakot, it did not escalate to the level it has escalated to now? Why is that this time is different?
The larger picture is that India is a vast country. It's a deep country. It has got great strategic depth. Insofar as even China is concerned, we have strategic depth. We have a border, and then, of course, China is across the Malacca Strait on the other side. Insofar as Pakistan is concerned, we have great amount of strategic depth. Anything located below Madhya Pradesh, even in terms of nuclear, is unreachable for them. So insofar as Pakistan was concerned, we did not really need submarines or what we called undersea capability, the naval triad, for a second strike capability. Anything located beyond could hit into Pakistan in the case of a second strike deep into Pakistan. In fact, it covers all of Pakistan with Agni 4. Even Agni 5 is far beyond that. Even Agni 3, Agni 4 covers all that. Whereas Pakistan's missiles do not cover entire India. So we are this thing. So that is why, one is that. The second is Pakistan is a linear country. They can mobilize faster and put their troops at the border very fast. But they also have no strategic depth. And generally, that's what they have been enunciating every now and then at the strategic level, that the line which joins Islamabad, Rawalpindi, the highway which comes from there, Rawalpindi, Islamabad, Lahore, Kasur, Dipalpur, and then goes on to Fort Abbas, is the line beyond which their core starts, the heartland starts. So the moment the Indian armed forces cross that line on ground, capture that much area, that 15, 20 kilometers depth up to Dipalpur, the moment you cross that, then you are behind, or you are between Kasur and Lahore, or you are between Islamabad and Lahore, and you are into the core of Pakistan, and the rest is open. So they say that is their nuclear threshold. They define it that way. But drawing a line in the sand is the easier part. You can just draw a line and carry out threatening people. It's the actual usage when it comes in that, things start getting really complicated. So that is part one of my thing. Second is, you asked that why wars between are not winnable. I did not mean, in the sense, there are wars which are winnable. There are wars which are winnable. For example, the Second World War was clearly won by the Allies. They had...
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not at all suggesting that we go to an area when, in fact, last week or this week was Victory Day, what Russia celebrates as Victory Day, when they actually defeated Nazi Germany. They lost 27 million people. I mean, those wars are over, I think. No, I was actually more curious, Brigadier, that why has escalation become higher this time as opposed to Uri or Balakot, where, we did strike, them across the border, but this didn't happen that, they're striking 15 targets here. They are, now saying we watch what we do. The saber rattling has become a lot noisier this time. Is it because they are pandering to a local audience as well, or has something changed strategically for them on the ground?
Let me just first go back to why wars between two neighbors are not winnable.
Okay, right.
They will be victors. If you see my piece, I've very clearly written, India is a much larger economy. And today, wars are driven by economic might. Those days of, one sword, one spear, and one are gone. Today, we are fighting what we call techno-industrial wars. Technology with the ability to produce munitions, at a very fast rate and field them in the sea. So the second part of this is that, Pakistan does not have the ability to sustain a war against India, because eventually, after a few days of war, we will prevail upon them. Our armed forces are far better equipped. They are large in number. We are able to bring more combat power on the battlefield in all forms. However, that process of reducing the Pakistani armed forces, you see, that's not the Pakistani armed forces are not the Taliban. They are neither the Palestinians. So the process of reducing that armed forces will take a few days. Now, the destruction that will happen and the attacks that they launch, the artillery, etc., like what you're witnessing on the LOC, will also be there on our side. There will be some destruction on our side.
Right.
So what we are trying to say is that in the case of, the United States fighting a battle from a war from Konus, and everybody going about their life without even seeing one round being fired, is different in our case. There will be certain amount of damage on our side, especially in the 100 kilometers belt adjoining the border. So that is why, at the end of the day, such wars are not really, winnable in the classical sense of the victory.
Can I ask a question? So,
Yes.
but how do you view aerial attacks as like a response to terror? Like, for example, Balkot, what do you think it achieved? Like, do you think they have a deterrent value? Or is it mostly about sort of sending a message, but the outcome of it doesn't actually achieve much?
History tells us that these attacks we have fought a number of wars with Pakistan.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that terrorist sponsorship and the fomenting of terror inside India continues.
Right.
But it's also about punishment. Also about telling people that you can't continue this, ad lib, and then hope that nothing will happen. Because in which case, you are only encouraging, allowing encouragement of that deed to be perpetuated time and time again, which is absolutely not desirable. So there has to be punishment. Just as a person who carries out in let's say in the civil, let's say there is a serial murderer. Would you like to just chastise him, send him for psychological counseling for some time, or at some stage of his crimes, you would like to say, okay, it's time, you send him to the electric chair, or or something like that, or imprison him for life or something like that. There's a serial killer around there. So this is about punishment, and that's what the Indian Air Force has tried to inflict without crossing the border, because the moment you cross the border, then, you are looking at the prospect of greater conflagration.
Right.
So, like you said, we've always known these terror facilities have existed. We've always presented this option to governments, even after 26/11, that, we can go and we can strike them. What do you think has fundamentally changed for us to go into Punjab? I mean, what has significantly changed here is that we've redrawn the red line. We've gone into proper Punjab and hit Murid ke Bahawalpur. How do you think this decision was taken, even though you were probably not there while it was being taken? But what's your guess on why this time we decided to just go all the way? And will that significantly change our ability to manage the escalation? Because you can manage it if it's in POK. But now that we've gone into Punjab, we kind of now have to wait for what Pakistan does.
Okay, let me first handle the escalation part. You see, what is being left unsaid and unstated and not being spoken about is the issue that till now, till very recently, we always had some large superpower as a mediator.
Yeah.
Or a crisis manager.
Yeah.
If you look at Kargil, look at the amount of interest that was taken by the United States. Nawaz Sharif was there, our own, defense minister that time, Mr. Jaswant Singh was there. There were parleys, they, intervened, and they ensured that, the crisis wound down and did not escalate to nuclear levels. In fact, there's a specific story which goes around and tells that the US Deputy NSA told Pakistan, unsheath your nukes and put them back. If you recall that story, it went around. So they were also the crisis managers. Now, if you look at post Balakot, behind the scenes, if you read that Congressional Research Service report of January 2020, which has been put out by the Congressional CRS for their own Congress, if you read that report, that very clearly brings out what happened behind the scenes and how many times, President Trump at that stage intervened, talked to people, and
Yeah.
ensured that Pakistan released, Abhinandan, Wing Commander Abhinandan, the pilot, and both sides wound down. Now, if you notice, there is rather disinterest from the side of the United States.
Why is that?
I think dynamics have possibly changed. He's more focused on, Europe, and he has taken too many things on his plate.
Yeah, he seems very nonchalant. Trump, his statements seem very nonchalant. They're very like,
Also,
too bad.
also, I think he does not take his job of a world leader seriously. And that is clear by several interviews he's given over the last week. The
Yeah.
most notable, when he was asked, do you think it is your job to uphold the Constitution? He says, no, I don't really think that's my job. Joe Biden, in a surprisingly coherent interview to the BBC day before yesterday, has pointed out to many things that Trump does that does not behove a world leader. So Trump really doesn't give a shit if we bomb ourselves to death. He doesn't care. We are the global south. We are not close to him. We are not North America. We are not Europe. We are not Havana. There's no, Cuban Missile Crisis happening in their back door. So I think they don't really care. Although Marco Rubio has spoken, apparently, according to CNN, to both Prime Minister Modi and
Yes.
the Prime Minister of Pakistan over the last few days. But I think one interesting perspective that I saw, which concerns the media, which completely turned fake news on its head, was this interview that was done on CNN last night of, I think, the former ambassador or the representative of UK to the UN, and he has also served at some point in Pakistan, who said that there's going to be this strategic escalation, which he says is basically, first, they hit us, 20 kilometers inside or 200 kilometers, we'll hit them 40 kilometers inside, they'll hit us 45 kilometers, we'll hit them 50, until someone comes and stops both sides, and bahut ho gaya. You don't get too deep, right? And in the meantime, as most Western media describes both Pakistani media and Indian news media as those having a very casual relationship with the truth, which is unfortunate, because I remember 15, 20 years ago, the Pakistani media was a joke. The Indian media wasn't quite a joke. It was not fantastic, but it wasn't ridiculous. Now we are at the same level. And they said both the medias will weave their own fake news narrative to placate their domestic audience. And both will be fake, but everyone can go home and relax and go to sleep.
But it can de-escalate.
That is a good way of de-escalation, where fake news plays a sakaratmak role. So I thought that was a very interesting take.
There is
But
one.
let's go back. You can finish
three things,
my...
Firstly, about Trump. I would not really agree that, Trump, President Trump does make statements which, are perhaps off the cuff. But, my personal experience from many, many visits to the US and having been part of many strategic dialogues, etc., and all that, is that the US, the president is not all that powerful as we make him out to be. There are very strong institutions in the United States. Like if you look at the first term of Trump, you please remember how James Comey of the FBI stood up to him. How did the Attorney General stand up to him? Today, if you notice within the Pentagon, there's a pushback against what Pete Hegseth has been trying to do.
Yeah.
So they have very, very strong institutions, and there is always a pushback. So, while let's not, just carried away by optics in the way that a person says something, if he doesn't mean, it doesn't really, this thing. So I would like to investigate that issue far more deeply on the basis of what he achieves through that statement rather than the statement itself.
Right.
Now, the second part is the escalation. I think in the case of Balakot, we just hit one seminary and the issue was over. Now, this time, the strike has been across. See, the strikes across the LOC are have been going on ever since independence because it is the line of control. So, they have been shelling. In 2003, we had a ceasefire agreement. After it started again, stopped again, started again, stopped again. It's been going on. But crossing the international border and hitting two places is perhaps one of Pakistan's red lines. Although the Indian Air Force and the armed forces and the MEA has clarified that we have not targeted any military civilian infrastructure, or any industry. What has been a long-standing, intelligence identified terror infrastructure, and that has been struck. So, but the Pakistanis, they have said that it's a violation of our sovereignty. So perhaps that's why, they, and also you see the Pakistani army today is enjoying a rather poor image. They are also beset on many fronts. There is a Baluch problem going on. And you recall that train siege, the TTP is acting up, the Taliban, Afghan Taliban, they are putting pressure on them, etc., and all that. So, they are preoccupied on many fronts. So, this government also, after the imprisonment of removal of Imran Khan, that ouster of Imran Khan, it is still trying to establish it. And add to it the, economic evisceration, which has happened over there. So, this is perhaps a thing which is they are trying to gather everybody behind them in the name of nationalism.
Right. I mean, but I must say, sorry if others disagree, as are we. That's inevitable in a war, isn't it? I mean, any country in a war invokes nationalism to get the popular support. I mean, that is one thing that is common across the world.
So there is a bit of difference. So I want to address first the question Manisha answered and you talked about it. US is less interested now because one, they don't need Pakistan anymore like they did back then. Pakistan's in its own stature has gone down in the world. They are much down and we have grown.
Sure.
Not as we want to be, we should be, but we have the difference is much more now. The third is almost every NATO country, Western country, has wisened up to the Pakistan game because since the Mujahideen USSR invasion of Afghanistan, what Pakistan did was took the money from all the countries, wherever they could get it from, and used that money to breed terrorists, train them, and while they were fighting USSR in Afghanistan, they also diverted that money towards India. And now, since the Brigadier Sahib mentioned 99 and 2001, but post 2003, the only big incident which happened was 26/11, Mumbai. And we could have taken the steps, but we still did not have, and in my opinion, we still don't have that strategic depth. And Manmohan Singh was also criticized for not doing anything. But now we do have it. And because people are more trustworthy of us, the strategic wherewithal to take action. Because to say no, that we will not tolerate this terrorism anymore, to draw a line in the sand like Brigadier Sahib said. That is the thing. That is why the Western countries, especially United States, is much less interested. Because one, like Henry Kissinger said, being a friend of United States is like putting yourself in peril in itself. That is the reason. It's Henry Kissinger's words on record. They don't need Pakistan anymore. After Osama bin Laden was found.
Yeah, I think they don't need Pakistan anymore. That is one thing. But strategic depth, there is some. I mean, I do not kind of buy into that narrative. that there is any real thought through a cohesive mechanism by which we are taking apart terrorism in the long run. As we've had
Yes.
a guest in the past who's the only a time in history where terrorism has been, completely finished. And in a sense, it is what the brigadier also said, that between neighbors, a war, even if you win a war, if your neighbors, there'll always be some issue, was Northern Ireland. And
Yeah.
how that was dealt with is very different. And I don't, if there's any other case in the world where you have been able to wipe out terrorism and live in harmony, we are yet to see it.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I agree
So-
with you.
So I don't
I mean,
think...
this is one of the ways to hit strategically and have punitive measures to hit the money.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
but I'm saying...
and along with that, de-radicalize, a lot of things. Like, it can never be one thing. It's always a mixture of 5
yeah,
or 6
but which is
things
what I'm
that you
saying.
do.
No.
Then that's a strategy that has to be cohesive, thought through. I don't believe that has happened in any time in my living memory.
Oh,
Or
I
if it
agree.
has, it's been completely ineffective.
I agree with you. Like the point I made, and
Yeah, sorry,
Abhinandan,
go
may
ahead.
I butt in, please?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
yes, please.
I will like to, answer two things. One is this thing that you mentioned. It's, you must read a study by Rand. It's entitled, How Insurgencies End and How Terrorist Entities End. Very interesting. They have carried out analysis of over 100 terrorist entities. And it was found that 40% died or got finished because their political objectives were met. And they go on to define that most of these terrorist entities had very, very finite, political objectives. One. Second, 43% were ended with the help of police and focused intelligence operations. Why police? I'll come to that at the end of this. Now, 10% died on their own and only 7% were terminated with the help of the armed forces. And they said that armed forces are a blunt instrument. Why not armed forces? Because armed forces come from outside, whereas the police knows almost the eating habits. I mean, literally the eating habits of
Yeah.
almost
Yeah,
everyone.
because of wahi ke hote hain.
Yes.
So 43% were ended with that. So it's a very interesting study. It's not that things have not been ended. Now, coming down to another part, you see, the problem is today that this is what we are talking about, terrorism as a classic case of injustice or something like that, or against invader or something like this. Like, in Ireland, or
Yes,
in
Or
Malaysia.
any perceived injustice, even if not real injustice, it just has to be perceived by a select bunch.
No.
Huh.
See, there are cases, for example, like there are cases in which some people have come from outside, like in Africa, people fought against people coming in from outside. So you may call them a terrorist, but but that is not what we are talking about today. I want to make 2 points in this case. See, today, terrorism is a form of warfare. We are not willing to admit it. It has become a form of warfare. Why? Because it is the cheapest option to disrupt a country. With a few people and some money, you are tying down the resources of that country. You're tying down the intelligence resources, the economic resources, the military who have to flood that area. And you are also carrying out aggravation of that population. Why? Because when the military goes in, they have to carry out a check. I have been there. So, when you carry out a check, you have to stop people get inconvenienced. There's a lady walking by and you really not sure, is it a lady? What's that sticking out? And you stop and you, and it's not me who stops. Somebody from the Jawan stops and he says, stop. And you find she's carrying an umbrella. But the fact that she has been stopped and checked, is an aggravation. Some people perceive it that, why are you checking me? So there's inconvenience. So it's become a form of warfare against another state. It's the cheapest option. Then at the end of that, there is a deniability. Now, A lot of people say this is irregular war. But the problem is no war is regular or irregular. No war is regular. What is a regular war? Is a regular war are there some rules like basketball? This is a three-pointer, or there's a referee standing over there. So no war is regular or irregular. If you go back to, that saying, war is a continuation of politics by other means. Terrorism, a continuation of a form of warfare by other means.
Sure.
So what we are facing is a form of war, which is deniable and which is cheaper to wage.
Yes.
Right. And
And that's at the heart of the problem.
No, I had one question. This is strategic. Just want to know your views on it, and then I also want to know the panel's views on it. While watching the international media, what really, and I've mentioned this last time also, what really sometimes irritates and annoys me is, my views, my politics is, pretty transparent. I'm not one of those hyper nationalists or even slightly nationalist or at all nationalist. But I don't think there is any doubt of Pakistan's aggression using terrorism over the decades. But yet, even in the case of what happened in Pahalgam, the BBC refused to call those men terrorists. Men with guns is how they described them. When I was watching CNN last night, when I've been watching Al Jazeera, I've been watching so many of these international channels, and the narrative to me, and I think I'm a pretty objective party. I'm no Pakistani hating, Hindutva warrior, but I think there is a clear bad guy here, which is Pakistan, historically. But yet the world doesn't see it. And I don't see how they don't see it. And what I figured is...
The world doesn't, the world
but no,
doesn't
sir,
see it
my
from
point is because all the reporters are reporting from POK. Not a single of the foreign correspondents is allowed in Kashmir. Would we not be able to push our narrative if we said, boss, come and report from here? Everyone is on that side. Not a single reporter can report from here. We lose the international narrative.
No, I see. That's what I'm trying to say. You see, we really need to look at how West views terrorism. One is the UN, that loose UN definition. By the UN, attack by irregular forces on armed forces personnel of another country or security personnel is not surprisingly terrorism.
Then what is?
They say it is irregular warfare, asymmetric warfare, irregular warfare. Only when civilians are attacked, they are defining it as terrorism, very strangely. Now, why the West behaves that way? Terrorism, really speaking, we are now talking of terrorism. But who are the founders of terrorism, modern contemporary terrorism? Of course, I'm not trying to trace the roots of terrorism back to the Israelis and, those the people who went through this thing. It's as old as history of mankind and any other profession, terrorism. But if you look at what happened in the Second World War, the so-called resistance fighters, beautifully brought out in that movie, Inglorious Bastards. People operating behind the lines. Now to Germans, they were terrorists. To the French and to the Allies, they were resistance fighters. So, and many of the terrorist groups, if you look at the UK, if you look at the US, they have sponsored terrorism across the world. They have been, the United States has always been in the forefront of what we call rent an army. Somewhere rent an army. If you look at Iraq, the Sunni militias.
Yeah.
And if you go to Afghanistan, back in Afghanistan, they were the Mujahideen. So they have a slightly different definition. And in their case, especially in the case of the United States, they have not been really troubled except by the 9/11 attacks. Beyond that, they have really not been troubled internally by terrorism. If you must go down to a website called the Southern Law Poverty Center and the FBI websites, surprisingly, when a US citizen, especially Anglo-Saxon, kills 250 people or shoots down children, 30, 40, 50 children, it is not terrorism. It's a shootout. And the NRA will come and tell you, people, guns don't kill people, people kill people. That kind of, bland, glib definition. And it's not just as simple as that. In their case, if you look at the number of so-called terror groups, many of their, worst. In fact, if you go down to the FBI website and to the Southern Law Poverty Center, what is called statistic, you'll find these guys have killed more of their own than terrorists have killed them.
Sure.
So they have a different variation of terrorism altogether, and they are unable to see what's happening to us.
But do you think
they're just
but do you think it's strategically, even for optics, better idea to let media report from Indian Kashmir as well, at least what is not occupied by Pakistan, so that they trust our narrative as well? Because I just find the narrative that is put out there, while they try to be neutral, they seem to suggest that they are kind of more, they are more likely to believe what Pakistan is saying, which I find bizarre. Because because Pakistan is a serious country. It's not a serious country. It is 3 cities that have some sort of order, which is Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi, and maybe to an extent Rawalpindi. The rest of Pakistan is the Wild West. So why would their narrative at all be comparable to a country which is a functioning democracy, however noisy or problematic it be? Would it not solve the problem by just letting a few reporters or journalists enter Kashmir?
Yeah, I fully agree. In fact, I find some of their reporting is just recently that, Yalda Hakim, she did some very serious questioning, with their defense minister. She's the one who really tried to put him on the mat. But many other, journalists or, news portals, they don't ask those difficult questions in reporting. Yes, I personally fully subscribe to your view that, many of them should be encouraged to come and report from India and give our perspective, our pain, our problems, so that, there's a balanced view which is being projected and not a one-sided view. But again, if you come down, you see, Pakistan was a chosen one from the 50s by the United States. They were part of that CENTO, that Mutual Defense Pact. All their officers, were doing courses abroad. Most of the civilians were going for study abroad. They were the chosen one till very recently. Till about 15 years back, they were, the privileged ones. So there is a easy access. A lot of people find that ease of associating with them over there, whereas they have yet to find, that ability to reach out, meet people here, and do the reporting here. But I fully agree. I think they should be encouraged to come here and see what is happening, rather than just sit down over there and report from there.
But we'll come to that battle later. Right now, let's try to get Indian reporters in to report from India. But thank you so much for joining us, Brigadier. It has been an extremely wonderful conversation and got to learn a lot. But before we say goodbye, can we get you to recommend something that would enrich the lives of our listeners?
We tend to go much by hearsay. We cheat in the way like we want to buy a car. Ask someone. And that guy says, I don't know, I'll ask someone. And who do they end up asking? They end up asking an 80-year-old Buaji or something like that, or Fufaji, That guy was born in an era when cars were, the thing. So, why aren't you doing your own internet? So I learned one thing, that whenever you speak, whenever you think, people, form an opinion of you based on what you speak. So deeply investigate an issue, both sides. So what we were taught is, whenever you make an intelligence assessment, marshal all the evidence. Make 2 assessments. Okay, one assessment and a competing negative hypothesis.
Yes.
Compare both and see which has got more credibility, weight based on your own experience, learning, and then go with that. Or even amend that, or take pieces from the competing and put it here. I apply that to my everyday life. That is one thing that I can tell people, that learn how to deeply investigate every issue, even every minor issue,
Yes.
before forming an opinion. Second is, I always would say that read deeply. I have a huge collection of books. My wife blames me that the number of books that I bought, if I had not bought them, she could have built another house.
Right.
So, she blames me for that. So I read a lot of books. Anything that I lay my hands on, I mean, not trash.
So tell us the last good book you read.
Right now, I'm reading this. This is Robert Kaplan's. He's a good writer. This is The Ends of the Earth. I read that. I read a lot into grand strategy, nuclear deterrence theories, on conflict, etc., and all that. I read things by Thomas Friedman. You are aware of who George Friedman is? He was the founder of Stratfor, which they call the parallel CIA. So after that, it was taken over by another group. He's formed another company called Geopolitical Futures. It's a paid site, but he writes excellent stuff. Now, there are a lot of old authors. You have Sun Tzu, you have Miyamoto Musashi, you have Little Art, you have Clausewitz, you have, what is called Gaddis, you have Luttwak, there's a whole range of people you can continue. Modern people, like if you are reading, I would recommend that every person go through that 4 volumes of Yuval Noah Harari, starting off from Sapiens.
Yeah, a lot of people recommended that.
Yes. I have to say,
Stop
Brigadier
wasting
Saab
time on Indian serials.
What about Indian TV news, which is very excited?
Manisha, I'm sorry to say, I threw out the set-top box about 5 years back.
Good move.
We don't watch any news channel.
Thank you so much for that, Brigadier. So our audience,
Yes.
not only did you get 2 recommendations of what you should read, you also got a recommendation of what you should not watch. And that is what you get on the Press Freedom Week 1+1 offer. You can scan this QR code and contribute to a media that is not vacuous and shouting and exploiting your emotions. But thank you so much, sir. Pleasure speaking with you. Stay safe, stay motivated, and motivating others. Thank you so much.
Thank you
sir.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Hello. Sorry about this ad break. It's an ad about us on our show, not paid for by taxpayers' money. So actually, I should not be sorry. This is an information-only message for a very special episode of a crossover between Hafta and South Central. As you know, the Newslaundry and News Minute have a partnership, an association which we hope to cement even further. And as part of that crossover of our 2 flagship podcasts, we have a special freedom of speech episode. This special episode is going to be aired or put online, not aired, that's obsolete term. Will be put online on May the 13th, which is a Tuesday. And this is a conversation with Kunal Kamra, Dhanya Rajendran, Pooja Prasanna, Manisha Pande, and myself. So Kunal is going to tell us about, of course, his recent brushes with the law, freedom of speech, satire, political satire, etc., etc. And let me see if I've completed the message. Of course I haven't, because I can never remember anything. There is this QR code which you have to scan, because this episode is for subscribers only. So you have to be a subscriber of Newslaundry or News Minute or a member. I would suggest pick up a joint subscription. You can get everything on both sides. And by both sides, I mean News Minute and Newslaundry. And there's a QR code. There's a link in the show notes below. Get the full conversation. I highly recommend it. We've discussed many things about the history of satire, freedom of speech, political freedoms, etc., etc., etc. So, back to the Hafta now. Yeah, so on this matter, I'm sure all of us have stuff to share about what is happening, the battle. Manisha is very scared. She was saying, let's go to Bangalore. So, because now after the conversation with the Brigadier, she was saying, let's pakka go, because they cannot come that far. But
oh my God.
Go below Madhya
But-
Pradesh.
yeah,
Jayashree said.
Jayashree rolls her eyes. You're sitting safe in Chennai, so chill out.
We had 2 mock drills, one at the atomic plant in Kalpakam and one at the Chennai port.
Actually, that
So,
must
yeah.
be, it must, yeah, all the, where the
Yesterday you
plant
had
site must be quite tense.
Okay, I'm just saying, just this is India. This is India, a country, and this is something that I've observed before I come back to the point that I want to ask you about the media reporting from Kashmir. But India is the country where during the Delhi riots, a cop pointed a gun at this
Correct.
man charging at him. He was no Daku Gabbar Singh, he was a regular dude. His name was Shahrukh, I think.
Yes.
He kept walking. We had the reverse. A guy pointing a gun at a cop. The cop is pushing the gun away. Hatao, hatao, hatao. Like in America, if someone points a gun, the guy's hitting the floor, or everyone's backed off. Here, people are saying, "Banduk, acha, hata, na, hatao." It's like this. India is the country where there's an earthquake. I live in a high-rise complex. Thing is shaking. People are shouting, "Are you going down?" No. But it's lasting a little long. Yeah. Should we
The
go?
most tragic is India as a country
Then
where
we'll
the
have to
tsunami-
come up. We'll say, okay, nahi yaar, theek hai. We'll see.
India is a
We'll
country
sleep.
where the tsunami took place and it was horrific when it happened and so many people died and so many people that I know drove that morning to Marina Beach to stand and watch the waves coming in and then they were like, oh my God, it's coming really
So
fast.
this
we're
is
gonna die,"
that
and they
country.
ran
So
off.
I'm not sure
India is that.
how effective security drills are. And secondly, I don't know whether you've seen the videos of cops or ambulance personnel picking up people who are injured. Those are people who are trained. And you've seen how they pick up injured people. I was watching a match recently, Indian match. Someone got injured. The people who went on the stretcher, how they picked him up. So if you think one drill of half an hour is going to do anything, good luck.
Nahi.
So, but
No,
coming
but
back-
anyway, the point of, with, like he said, modern warfare and all, you need bunkers. So if a siren goes off, the drill has to be about reaching your bunker as soon as possible. We don't have that in cities.
Mm.
And you don't need lights anymore, no? Like putting up black chart paper, yeah,
Mm.
andhera karna doesn't make a difference to where the
This
missile
is the World War
lands.
II approach to a drill.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is the
Makes no
equivalent of
sense.
thali bajao.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me just go
Yes.
around the table on this. I mean, genuinely, forget your politics of this government or this. Isn't it just basic? Every international report I see, the reporter is standing, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Dude, why let the reporter report from here? See that this is more normal than that side. Why don't we allow that? Isn't it a no-brainer? Or am I missing something?
So
Why don't we allow foreign media to report from Kashmir?
Yeah.
But that's been a very long-standing strategy now for almost 10 years.
What is it
But
serving?
what
But
is the
I
strategy?
think
Like,
because
what-
you don't want, what happens, the Indian view is that when foreign media reports, it tends to report on the excesses by the armed forces. The idea is to curtail information in a way that if normal people tend to complain about what has happened to them, like he said, we've been stopped, we're being checked, or our house has been razed, that should not go out. So I
So
think
we're
the
saying that the strategy is that the Indian army or Indian
the
state
fear
is committing
is-
a certain kind of excess also, which, it
which
doesn't
should
want
not
to get
come
out.
out.
Well,
No,
but
no.
I mean that's
And
surely can't be.
I think there is a sense of distrust. I mean, whether it is international media or the Indian media.
Indian media, no. Indian media is allowed in Kashmir.
There
With
is a sense.
international
No,
media,
no.
there's a sense of
There
distrust.
is a sense of distrust, even in case of Indian
But
media.
at least we can somehow
But
get
at least
in
we
there.
can go and report.
Mm.
Okay, we can report. But here, I think the government, they try to give their own perception, and which they have been selling it so far. I mean, they are quite successful about it, and I think they have quite meticulously. I mean, I'm not discussing the media is sense of distrust. That's what I feel. But the perception that they have given about this particular war, even the violence looks, very much part of the diplomacy that they are playing, along with this violence. The 9 strikes that they have done. So you also have the Foreign Secretary meeting the 13 envoys of Security Council,
Mm.
and telling that how we are just attacking the terror infra. We are not attacking, the country per
Sure.
se. So I think
military-
it
or
was very
military installations.
meticulously planned
Yeah.
and ensuring that the media.
I
does not
think the
make-
messaging was managed, but this is not a BJP thing of not allowing foreign media there.
Hmm.
This has been the policy for decades. It was there in the UPA time as well. I just don't understand what has it served.
No, the last time when there was a
Before
major,
2014, we were out.
there were lots of media.
What,
Ellen
foreign
Barry,
press?
of course,
Huh.
Ellen Barry has written so many pieces from NYT from there, especially when there was a massive after Burhan Wani. No, not after Burhan Wani.
No, I
Before
don't-
that, she was there when.
No. Well,
when there was a massive
Yeah, but this is not
unrest
a
on the
Modi
streets.
government development because I remember even during the UPA time, I was having a conversation with some foreign correspondents who were complaining that they cannot get to Kashmir to report. It is easier for them to report on that side. So I'm not sure if it was a blanket policy, but it was very difficult for foreign correspondents to report from this side of Kashmir. And do you have a view on it? Why does
Yes,
it work?
so
And has it served its purpose?
So I have a long answer for this, but
which is not unusual.
Yes, but like a complex, like Brigadier Saab said, like you have to research and think about it. So I have been reading about this for a long time, and that approach has been to my life. Like even if you have to buy specs, you have to research them. So I have a view which I get a flack for, but India, and like it's very easy to say it in Hindi. हमें दुश्मनी निभानी नहीं आती. India, for some reason, since 20th century, we don't know how to hold long-term, long-term grudges and be strategic about it. We always get weak-kneed. Like the inception of this state, like take a dispassionate view. Since the day this state was born, it has been at war with you. So why are you deluding yourself? Administration after administration has been deluding themselves and do not take long-term steps. I'll give you an example. Like I always forget the name of this dam, so I wrote it. Like the Shahpur Kandi Dam, which was inaugurated by Indira Gandhi in 1982 and was signed by the grandfather of Umar Abdullah, Sheikh Abdullah, and this Prakash Singh Badal in 1979. It's still not finished. We don't do strategic affairs things. And
that is true for the PWD of every state in the country.
But that's the point, right? Look at other countries.
It's true.
Look at China. Look at even smaller countries, Israel. I am not going into value judgment that your animosity is wrong or right. But these things are long-term strategies. They do not happen in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years.
That's true.
There is another aspect.
And there has to be consistency across governments.
Yes. And two more aspects to this. One, our diplomatic corps has always been understaffed. The answer to your question lies there. Pakistan, no matter how deluded or delusional its policy is, but its core policy is India is our enemy. And it always puts primary efforts to that. So, it has actors which it has trained and long-term establishment invested in it, be it academics, be it in media. So, they have their pitch prepared. Whenever this happens, even state actors who are not seemingly or obviously part of the Pakistan administration. I'll give you an example of BBC. Why does BBC take this look? Because Pakistanis living in England, more than 50% of them are from Mirpur. Mirpur is in POK. They have cultivated it. It takes a long time for all these things to happen. About the media thing, look at what happened. It's such an ironic thing. Zubair, which is hounded by every right-wing person in India, was the only one countering Pakistan claims. And eventually, the BJP goons were saying, he is our guy. Our governments subsequently, for decades and decades, hate two things primarily: transparency and accountability. If you have to, create reputation in international media that even the people who don't like you would report for you if something happens, you have to open up your borders for journalists going to Kashmir. You have to be able to accountable. And this government doesn't like a question asked to it. Then how do you keep people accountable? And international affairs are not in anybody's control. There is a very simple aspect. The last one to this is Pakistan sustains itself now for past decade or so with the help of China. And China openly suggests and has been saying for a long time in its military doctrine that we have to keep India engaged because they see us as rivals. That's why they help. They openly support terrorists.
In fact, they very clearly came out in support of Pakistan.
Yeah.
Very clear. One of the very few countries that really... But it's practically a colony also, no?
Yeah, exactly.
Pakistan is practically a colony.
And not just Pakistan, Sri Lanka, they've invested in ports. But I generally also think that the West has this patronizing attitude to the rest of the world. And in that patronizing kind of framework, anyone who is more powerful is always the overdog, top dog, and they will always side with the underdog. And in the general geopolitical, economic might, strategic size, etc., India is top dog. So for them, no matter what, Pakistan remains the underdog. So I think they're a lot more, indulgent towards that. I mean, I just don't see whether it is Osama bin Laden having been found in Pakistan, in Abbottabad, whether it is, the economic condition of the country, whether it is how consistent it is on democracy. You see, on all objective, quantifiable parameters, it is not a serious nation. But
And-
yet they get the narrative out, which I find bizarre.
Oh, because they have
But-
cultivated that thing, na?
But
And
But
also
besides-
because of ISI's control, because of the army's control, and because of the close association with America, with CIA,
But the
because they've needed
international
them.
perception is still that Pakistan is a state which harbors
Yeah.
all the terrorists.
Yeah, but yet they don't see India as a victim. You see what I'm saying? I
But because
get
They
that.
did under Manmohan Singh far more than they do now. That I completely agree.
But although all other foreign countries and all important prime ministers, and they've all come out very clearly saying that India has the right to respond to terror. Like they have recognized Pahalgam as terror.
Yeah, but that doesn't name Pakistan. You see, when these
Yeah.
international statements
Yes.
are made, they're made very carefully. It is like let me take the example of another foreign policy expert. Technically, she was right, Urvashi Rotela, when she said there is an Urvashi Mandir at Badrinath. The reporter kept asking her, is it named after you? She said, वहाँ उर्वशी नाम का मंदिर है. मैं ये पूछ रहा हूँ, क्या वो आपके नाम पर बना है? वहाँ एक उर्वशी नाम का मंदिर है.
Why are you watching this?
He's
I
not
was-
wrong, you know.
I have no idea where
she's not
you.
wrong. So
It's
I have no idea what
this
he's
is-
watching
this
on
is the
Instagram.
problem. This is why you cannot be taken
Some
seriously as a
strange-
journalist like I can be
I-
taken.
I
You
have
don't know who is
many-
Urvashi
I-
Rotela.
But look,
I have many-
point I wanted to add that if they start to do that, then they'll have to look within, like the defense minister told Yalda Hakim that we've been doing this dirty work for you.
Exactly, he said it also.
So we've been doing it
So
for you.
how about showing
then-
India some sympathy?
Because then the US will have to look within and look at what
So
they've
let
created.
them look within. Look at Trump. He's saying we fucked up throughout our lives. So let him also acknowledge one more. Yeah, go ahead, Jayashree.
Okay, so on the media, the Western media itself is unable to use the actual terms that it must be using for things like Israel and Palestine. So I think expecting them to do it to Kashmir is very difficult now, especially because as that minister very clearly pointed fingers at America, but it doesn't matter. For me, though, I want to specifically talk about this, which is Pakistan killed innocent tourists based on them being Hindu. Now, with the shelling, there isn't even like a fig leaf of targeted attacks, right? It's just that Pakistan is setting out to kill innocent civilians, and that is what it wants to do. But on India's response, I think I do not see a cohesive long-term or strategic plan. Like, what is the response? Shouldn't it be with respect to the specific events, details of who masterminded, anything that what led to the attack, anything that directly addresses security failures or those responsible? Instead, what I feel like we are getting is muscle flexing. This entire thing of, we're going to draw a line in the sand and posturing and so on. This is what people want. Look, this is what people want because your nation is understandably upset and angry about a terror attack. But to only emotionally assuage the thirst for revenge while not doing anything demonstrably material that led to the circumstances, I feel, why aren't we allowed to question it? Like, why is everyone cheering on a prospect of war? And I think it is deplorable. There's no meaningful anti-war left in India. Even
Yeah.
the CPIM and CPI are clapping and cheerleading, and every single political party across the spectrum is saying, yes, we
But
will stand by
Jayashree-
you. Then on the media, I feel, why is it anti-national to merely ask for reporting and news instead of everyone closing ranks and saying that we must simply just repeat what the government has said? Why is
Yeah.
that some demonstration of patriotism that is required for us to even ask questions? There is no lack of, there's no desire to be factual, no perspective, no objectivity, even the so-called liberal media, which I find very depressing. Like,
Yeah,
it
but-
is some kind of...
Yeah, you're right. I think, but that's consistent with how it's the world over. Had
Yes,
it's being the notable exception in Israel.
But then complete abandonment of critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like that you have to fall in line. Even with Balakot, like it was in many ways a failure, right? Because they
Yes.
ignored 11 intelligence inputs about Pulwama that came before. Then they shot down their own aircraft. They only hit 173. We lost a pilot whom we then had to hectically sort of negotiate back. But still, like, it and it's like, okay, you shouldn't question it at the time, but we're not even questioning it now. This is like 5 years later.
Yeah.
So
Most cases of terrorism are very difficult to investigate because they have their roots abroad.
Hmm.
They have their roots in many countries. So if you see the terrorism that has happened so far, it has been traced back to Pakistan. So to say that if it was Balakot or Bombay, the Taj hotel
Hmm.
attack, I mean you could clearly connect it to Pakistan. I mean, even in case of Pahalgam, the same thing happened. So yes, it was. We may say that it was an intelligence failure, but to say that we investigate it and then
So
react,
that won't be
that
possible.
won't
So
be possible.
I think if you were to just really break this down, how do you deal with a heinous crime which is not under your legal jurisdiction?
Yeah, that's
It's that simple. What we are effectively doing is, if 5 or 50 or 100 people came and did a lathi charge or did a robbery or did a murder, they would be arrested, and under the jurisdiction of the nation, you can try them. So there is no, one-sidedness. There is critical evaluation. There is, I think the challenge becomes, and I mean, it's worth looking into. I think this is an interesting kind of thought piece to write, that what is an appropriate mechanism that we have that can be accurately articulated for investigating, questioning crimes that are not within the country's jurisdiction,
Yes.
and how would one even, pretty much look at them in different ways? And I think that's a tough one.
So two
I
things
think that even
wanted
if we're saying that you can't investigate it, I agree that it is difficult, but by bombing 9 places, how is this contributing to ensuring that a repeat doesn't happen? Like, should
Yeah,
there not be some
No,
measure of an
I
avoidance?
meant that. I meant all of that. Not investigate the crime. Investigate how you
Yeah.
deal with the situation, whether it is bombing. Because I'm not even saying you can't. See, you got to see what are the options on the table. Do nothing.
Yeah.
Do something. Do something and do something in the long run. Does India have a tradition of the deep state that America does, that no matter who was the president, their foreign policy is consistent, their view on communism is consistent, their view on, so does India have that? Do we not? I think those are questions we've just, even culturally, we don't question things, you see.
But I think the
No,
two things
because
I
see,
wanted to-
we already know that. Sorry, one more, just a couple of last things, which is that there are credible reports that there might have been a jet that came down, right? If not one jet, several jets. But my thing is, I'm not saying that we need to believe some random anonymous source on the internet is claiming X or Y. The thing is that it is to ask that question is seen to be unpatriotic, which is
That's the
insane to
problem.
me. I mean,
Yeah,
isn't it a heavy loss if it happened? Also, to ask the question, why weren't people evacuated from Poonch? Is that not a valid question to have asked? Because there was always the chance that retaliatory firing would happen. Why was that never done? And also, my very last thing is, and this might be a very unpopular take, but so the brigadier had said that we shouldn't get carried away by optics. I think we are widely carried away by optics. I feel like this entire Nari Shakti girl boss thing that we saw yesterday, and I mean, look, we're a country that we applauded Vinesh Fogart when she was winning medals for us. The second she called her sexual harassment, we threw her to the dogs. We applauded Himanshi Nawaz when we thought that she was, the model victim wife, widow of this slain Navy man. But then the second she said something we didn't like, we threw her to the dogs. So I'm saying, when you know that people are weaponizing optics in these ways, why is it that everyone is celebrating it? So
No, I
that is
completely
my-
disagree with that. I think I think messaging matters a lot. And especially in a country like India, you just have to see what happened within. I'm just looking at television media, right? Right from the time of Pahalgam, we have been, there's increased levels of anti-Muslim rhetoric on television media. There's been attacks on Kashmiris. There's been attacks on Muslims. And the moment you do this messaging, where you've had 2 women, one Muslim, one Hindu, come together, give this briefing, lead the briefing on Operation Sindoor, you had to see television that day. It was just a 360-degree turn. You suddenly shut this whole thing of let's ask questions of Muslims. So I think messaging matters. And in that sense, having 2 women and of different faiths, it was a very powerful message to put out. And messaging is very important sometimes.
Sure.
Because it completely kind of upturns, I think, it was funny to see anchors who'd been saying, ki kalma padha, ki wo kar, I mean, harping on that and continuous Hindu-Muslim thing, to suddenly say that, look, we are one country. This is the ethos of India. We have united. So, I think that has a deep impact on people when you see this imagery. So, to me, I think it was a very good thing. Two things about Operation Sindoor. I think every military strategist, people who've been in the defense, would agree that attacking, these precision targets cannot solve the problem of terrorism.
Yes.
Simply because this is a state policy for Pakistan. Like the Brigadier said, like Shardool said, this is it's a doctrine for them. It's a warfare method for them. So we can be very sure that Pahalgam is not going to be the last attack, and there will be more attacks. And we had said this in the earlier episode, that you have to be 24/7 vigilant, and the terrorists just have to get lucky for that 1 second. So that is there. But the point of these attacks is to say that, okay, we've had a long-standing grouse as a country, that we have not gone to Karachi on your railway station with AK-47s and gunned down your civilians. You've done that to us. You've attacked our parliament. Every other terror attack we can trace back to Pakistan. So there's been, way before Modi government, there has been this clamor that when are we going to respond? When does it get too much? Where is that line where we say, okay, enough is enough? Now we're going to do more than just present proof or talk to you or write letters to you or try and shame you. And I think that is what has really changed with Operation Sindoor. And I don't think I kind of get where it comes from. And the politics of it is there, of course. It comes from the fact that you today have a government which is very clear in its intention of what it thinks of Pakistan. Like Shardool was saying, that Pakistan is very clear that India is the enemy. For the current government, there's a very clear intention that Pakistan is the enemy. It may stem from aspects of Hindutva politics, but there's a clarity in intention. And so that trickles down, and you carry on this thing that you've been wanting to do for maybe 20 years. You've thought of it for 30 years. The only problem with this is that while you redraw the line, you now have the burden for every terror attack. Every terror attack now has to be met with an escalation greater than
Yes.
earlier. So Balakot, and now, we've gone deep into Punjab. We've attacked their defense installations in Lahore. Not installations, but the defense mechanisms.
Air Force.
Air Force defense. What do you call it?
Air
defense.
It's air base.
The air
Yeah,
defense.
their air defense in Lahore.
capabilities.
And you're sure that this is not a deterrent. So what happens next?
Right.
And do we have the
Yeah.
gumption to be engaged in this constant battle with a monkey with a gun, basically? That's how
No,
Pakistan is.
As I said, I think this time they have really meticulously planned. As you said, that messaging was very powerful, which it was, because people were talking that there was a Muslim woman also, who was there, part of the press briefing.
Yes.
So everybody was talking about it. It was the talking point, and if you see the newspapers today,
We are talking about
their
it.
stories
We're
have been given.
Hmm.
You know,
And it
so I
shuts
think
haters very
yeah.
quickly.
So,
It's
but
a very effective tool in
I
shutting
think
haters.
this Pahalgam, the message had to be given. The message was given, and even this violence has been wrapped into a proper diplomacy, because on the sides they are also informing the international community that how we have done it, what we have done it, and all that.
And
we are
video
very
proof.
professionally
Yeah.
just hitting the terror infra.
I mean, they
That's
may
the
want to
message.
communicate that. I'm not sure that that's what everybody's hearing, because wanting to do something is very different from
No,
actually
no,
being
no.
able to do it. So I
Yeah.
think that they may want to do a lot of things. I mean,
No, what I'm trying to
What do you
say.
mean?
he had even in the past told the Air Force to go when it's cloudy, so that.
No,
So
but
I mean,
here they've
I
given
forget
very...
wanting. I mean, I personally think that there is. What you're saying is that something had to be done, but what is that something? Is the question. I think we have to critically look at, does that something achieve anything? It's
But
very
for
hard
now,
to say.
we know
need
that
to-
the
but
targets were very
I think you're right,
precise.
because what we're saying is
that
the
is
government
clear. There's
doesn't
video
have to
proof.
do
The target was
something
precise,
well.
but will it? What I'm saying is, will it solve the problem you're trying to solve? What
No,
you're
but
saying is
terrorism
it.
is
Yeah,
not
I know.
solvable by just this.
Then
But
But everyone's
But
aware
then
of
you
that.
can't keep
No.
doing things.
So okay, then let's go down this rabbit
Yes.
hole. If you're saying it's not solvable, then we are. Let's look at it completely dispassionately. Then are we deploying resources that could be otherwise deployed for something that is not going to give us a positive outcome? Then what you're saying is The optics is the purpose, which in my view is
not-
nonsense.
But that's
Yes.
not the only thing, no.
So
What
then-
I'm saying is 9 strikes is not going to stop it, but it's one of the many things on the menu to stop
That's what-
something, to
Yes,
deter
but
something.
exactly. So if it's one of the many things, but not the only thing, it has not worked in the last 10 years, then
Yeah.
maybe we should start doing the other many things in addition to this one thing.
That we have to do.
So-
The
so
other
then-
many
so-
things have to be done with that
So
deterrence.
Economically,
so
it's
what the catch 22 sort of discussion we've come to, this is what I was talking about. What happens is, I'll give you a philosophical example, and which is very relatable. So, be it a household, be it an organization, any type, be it a state. If your domestic affairs are not in order, you will never be able to exert a pressure you want to on an external threat.
Good point.
Right? Now, what happens is, our governments, with what Jayashree was saying, people in Poonch were not forewarned, because people in India, especially state actors of different type, be it administrators of police, they are more interested in saving face and taking political gain and short-term political gains rather than looking at long-term strategic affairs. This is a chess game, and you are playing chess with another state, be it a smaller state, but they are a rogue state with nuclear weapons. You can't force them to do anything, so you have to deploy strategies which imposes costs, like you gave an example. But if you employ a strategy that if this happens, we will have to escalate this. If that escalation happens, we will impose this cost, and you create your narrative. People still believe and sort of subscribe to Pakistan narrative, because for decades and decades, their people have been employing that strategy and propaganda. When Indians go out, this government or any government, one decade we were talking about Aman Ki Asha, the next decade we are talking about we hate Muslims. The Indians are
Third
not
decade, we are saying Vishwaguru.
Yes.
So there's no consistency,
I'll
right?
give you a couple of examples. Like FATF, when they were being imposed a couple of years ago on Pakistan, India signed it. But why did you sign it? Why are you supporting the state which is sending terrorism? Who asked you to do this? Our diplomatic strength is 1,123 right now, when this government has ramped up the enrollment to double, which is 35, 36 per year, which is abysmally low for a country our size. Every other country around us, be it Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, punches above their weight. We always punch below our weight. Pata nahi kyun. And our diplomats are famous for getting visas for their children and relatives. It's an open secret. They don't work on long-term strategy. They are famous for कि हमारा visa लगवा दो. That's the thing.
So,
I think the worry is also that, like with Kashmir, after the abrogation, how everyone went tom-tomming that we've solved terrorism.
Yes.
I think that is the fundamental problem, that you do something, but then there's nothing beyond that. So I agree with you that these strikes, after this, you can't have 30 BJP rallies where the Home Minister and the Prime Minister are saying ki we finished terrorism in South Asia.
But
You've
they
done
will, I
this,
feel.
but it has to be along with long-term strategic goals, like figuring out the money, financing. Where is the financing? Like, instead of wondering where George Soros' money is going into this news organization, figure out like the headline about the port drugs that were caught and how that led to Pahalgam terror.
I mean, these guys talk about Hindu, like, let people who are critical of you ask you questions. They will open up the shortcomings which you are ignoring.
So on the Uri thing, no,
This is a very
we were
complex topic.
discussing exactly that de-radicalization and ending that sense of perceived injustice is very important. You look at the headlines that have come out yesterday. A poor man in Poonch died in the shelling along with the 13 people. He's just been dubbed a terrorist by 3 media organizations that are terrorists. He's your own civilian, a guy. How are you being... And when you are not... I mean, there's no control over your own narrative within your own... I mean, one day you're saying Operation Sindoor. Just 6 months ago, Prime Minister saying, wo Mangal Sutra chhin lenge. So there's a lot to be fixed within the country also, along with figuring out how you deal with foreign actors.
Yeah, I just feel, look, I mean, about those 2 women officers and all, the government knows its audience. You put a Muslim woman officer next to a Hindu woman officer, yes, it is impactful, it tells you a story. And they knew everyone would wax eloquent about what a beautiful nation we are, and that's what we're doing now. But also, I think we are just too easily impressed with tokenism.
But it's not tokenism. I don't think it's tokenism.
I think it's tokenism.
No, how is it tokenism? The person...
Okay, let her finish her thought. We'll come to that.
And I think the What we are looking for from a government is we want the government to do something. It doesn't matter if the government is doing something well or something that is fitting into some kind of plan. We just need something to happen, and then that's it.
Like the demonetization, when the whole
Yes, it
demo
is-
happened, and we've all experienced that with our friends who were,
Yes.
BJP lovers. They said, why are you jumping the gun? Let the data come in. Let the data come in.
Right.
Then the data started coming in 1 quarter. I would call again. Should we discuss? Let the data come in. Too short. 6 months, 8 months, 1 year. Black money back to our the trajectory of digitization standard. Now they don't even want to acknowledge. Now what is it? But at least he tried.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't matter whether anything came of it. Yeah. Now why do you think it's
No, because-
tokenism?
Okay.
It's not tokenism. Sorry.
It's not because Colonel Qureshi and Wing Commander Singh, they have cleared exams, they have passed the tests, they have been in the army, they've risen to the ranks on their merit. You are spotlighting the fact that these women exist and they have reached to highest positions. That's not tokenism.
Sure.
That doesn't mean everything is great with the army, that we have achieved all gender justice or that India is great. But you're spotlighting diversity within your organization to send a message at a time where you do need to send a message of unity. I am a managing editor at Newslaundry. If you put me on a panel with a diverse set of other panels, I don't think it's tokenism. I've reached here because of my merit.
But I don't
and then you're
think.
spotlighting
But it's
the
not
Yeah,
a
fact that-
commentary
but-
on you. It's
no,
not
no.
a commentary on you or the women officer. It is a commentary on why the government is using them to perform a certain purpose
So
while also having
And those
So-
its own general ethos of being anti-women, anti-Muslim, pro-Hindutva, and yet we say, oh my God, but they have put a woman Muslim officer,
Yeah,
so therefore
I
It's
think
a
if
sending
you,
message.
if you were to I mean, I think it could be both. I mean, it could be, I don't know what the dictionary word for tokenism is. I think tokenism, the way
for
you're.
the sake of it. It's to put someone there for the sake of
Yeah.
it without actually working towards
dikhane ka.
diversity.
So no, but what
basically
you're
using them.
but no, those are two different things. You can use
No.
someone who is deserving,
Yes.
and I think what Manisha's definition of tokenism is that the person doesn't deserve to be there. I don't think that is what.
no.
My definition is friends had an all-white.
My definition of tokenism is, suppose if you're a company in America, right, and you don't have a lot of black employees, you have 2 black employees and about 800 white employees, you put that black employee on your prospectus or on your
Yeah.
website,
So
and
that's
then you're
token.
using them to say, see,
So
we are
that's not
very
a
diverse.
comment on whether that person deserves to be in that position or
Correct.
not, which is what I
It
think
is
you're
what your
saying that
company is doing.
I don't think it's a question of
No,
whether she
but-
deserves to be
But
there
we
or not.
we do a diversity hire just because we need a
No, but-
diversity,
yeah,
so we
but-
just get them there.
Yeah, but
that kind of thing.
I think that's what Jayashree was saying. I think what she was saying is that this image does not reflect the reality of what's under the hood. I think that is true, but at the same time, optics matters. Just like I think, when Mayawati became chief minister and she made all those statues there, you could call it tokenism, but it was important that you will not only have Brahmin statues here.
Yeah.
There will also be a statue of a Dalit woman. Now, does that mean Mayawati cured, all the ills of Dalits? No, but that was important. I think. I mean,
Yes.
So I personally think, generally in politics, in governance, you take the small victories and while also working for the big ones.
Yes.
I think it made me happy to see a Muslim woman there. It didn't make me happy to see what circumstances brought her there. But this can be latched onto. So this is a wedge you can then ram through to say when you need. You have a Muhammad Zubair who checks your facts for you. You have a Colonel Qureshi who makes you look good. But yes, that doesn't mean all's good under the hood.
Yeah.
And I also
Yeah.
just made a poem
That is
So-
on the spot, like Anu Malik.
All is
like
not
that.
good under the hood, but also I don't want to conflate India with BJP.
Yes.
BJP has this vicious narrative when it comes to Muslims. But again, I don't think that's all that is under the hood. I think there's a reason why Colonel Qureshi is there at the top, because we are more than just anti-Muslim shit that BJP says.
No,
Yeah, but-
I think you guys are talking about the same thing from different aspects, like optics without any substantive long-term action, especially in like situation which is strategically important and an enemy state, is futile in long run, even in short run. So yes, the optics matter, but if you don't do anything to substantiate those optics into your system,
Yeah.
it will not matter. Like Zubair, I gave an example. Like Zubair is one guy countering, and even the right-wing trolls were praising him. But if you want people like Zubair to flourish, then you should subscribe to Newslaundry.
No, you should subscribe to
Subscribe to
Zubair.
Alt
Dude,
News.
उसका मत लिखा जाए.
I would say
ये हिंदू जुबैर का खाना चाहता है. Boss, subscribe to Alt News.
Alt News.
The Alt News link will be below. Zubair did a fantastic job.
no, but like you
But
want
you can also listen to him and for completely different reasons subscribe to us. But to say, boss,
no.
तूने तो मोदी को पीछे छोड़ दिया.
See, but well tried, well tried.
ये रहा
अरे कमाल है यार.
ये रहा मुसलमान. इसने फैक्ट चेकिंग किया है. अब तो हिंदू न्यूज़ लॉन्ड्री को सब्सक्राइब.
What?
नहीं, हमने-
How did Newslaundry become Hindu?
हमने एक report
My
कर दी.
point is that only एक अकेला चना कभी बाहर नहीं फोड़ सकता.
हाँ,
You
नहीं,
have
but I
you
think-
need more people
sorry.
like this, and for that you need an institution which breeds people like
No,
this.
but
For
we are not
you-
that institution. I don't want to take
But
that.
someday
it's
I
too
would
much.
like to know whose idea was it for that press briefing to be led by two women. I don't know if it's purely the PMO or if it was the
Right.
armed forces together who decided that, or the defense ministry or who. But I think it was a great idea.
Everything is, very meticulously
Planned by the PMO, you think? I don't know.
Well, I don't
Somebody,
know, but
somebody.
I don't know. I'd like to know the story behind that. I think it was very well done.
so on that note, which I've noticed is becoming my takiya kalam, and I really need to come up with a better one.
Should we read the letters?
Let's move on to the emails.
So we'll read quickly because we don't have much time. 6 o'clock in 5 minutes.
So
15
can we
minutes.
not? I saw whoever's curating this week's letters.
Me.
Yes.
So Jayashree, we have come with the rule: we cannot curate 400-word letters and 300-word
No,
letters.
I've culled 100-word snippet.
Yes,
from it.
you can only read 100
Maybe we
words of
can
those.
just-
Yeah. I've already written out the 100-word snippet.
Right. And you can mail us at podcasts@newslaundry.com. We only entertain the emails of subscribers. So you can subscribe. Here's the QR code. There's the link. Way to keep news free. The link is in the show notes. And we will be, addressing all the letters that I've gathered, which now I think about 60 odd in nature. The coming week, we have a full 2-hour recording of just letters. So if your letter hasn't been included, it will be addressed in the next episode.
Yes. So Vatsal Singh wrote 430 words. I'm reading only 100 words that I have taken out, which is, he says, what I've come to realize in the long-term diplomatic game is that India has failed to capitalize on speaking about Pakistan-occupied Kashmir on international forums. On the Kashmir issue, you'll easily find in the international media the discussion is about the Indian state of J&K, the erstwhile Article 370, its abrogation, as well as issues of human rights and so on. Highly educated and well-informed scholars will often talk about how the Indian government unilaterally abrogated Article 370, but there's rarely talk on how erstwhile FANA was illegally separated from the region of Kashmir and POK and practically given away to the government of Pakistan in 1947. Also, how Pakistan used backhand tactics to capture day-to-day administration and so on. I believe this has led to the selective internationalization of Kashmir. It's a long-term diplomatic and security challenge for India. And to internationally turn the tide on the rogue state like Pakistan, I think it's important to start talking about the whole of Kashmir and Kashmiris. I think this is exactly what we talked about, right?
Yeah.
That the international idea of it has changed. Right. The next email is from Noman Khan, who says, as a Kashmiri, I'm exhausted by how people act like resistance just materializes, as if it isn't the occupation itself that manufactures it. This isn't chaos, it's a structure. It's the same pattern we see in Palestine. Push people to the edge, strip them of rights, their voice, their future, and blame them for reacting. It's the same script, different flag. Most Kashmiris don't care about India or Pakistan. We want the right to exist with dignity, without soldiers in every corner or being paraded around as props for normalcy. No one wakes up wanting to pick up a gun. It's humiliation, grief, and hopelessness that push people there. The state builds the conditions and then acts shocked at the outcome. He says this cycle of violence is neither liberation nor justice. It's pain feeding pain. The state would rather tighten its boot than ask why the fire started in the first place.
Yeah, but although Kashmir is such a complicated issue, of course, we have Kashmir ki kahani. There is no doubt about the, excesses, and enough has been written, said, films have been made about the excesses of the military. But it was a complicated problem to begin with. Like what I'm saying is that I'm not sure that an accurate description is that this entire resentment or the friction in Kashmir started with the Indian army entering there.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it was a problem that preceded all that. How it's been handled can be questioned, but that's not why it exists.
And Kashmir is not
genesis is
comparable
not-
to
Yeah, the genesis is not the same. And
Kashmir
yeah,
is not comparable to
to
Palestine.
Palestine. I don't think the two are comparable either. Yes.
Also, there's a very old Let's Talk About We Did, no?
Yeah,
I think
we
it was
did.
before I joined, which was quite good. A two-part
Yes.
thing on Kashmir.
Yeah. In fact, you could watch that as well.
Right. Anonymous has said, I recommend interpret and filter for arguments and ideas instead of a word limit. I disagree with the decision to remove Raman sir's clip. I believe the mainstream reaction to misinformation is in whitewashing territory. I prefer an apology and disclaimer to appear alongside prominently read out separately rather than rewrite history. Key words like disinformation, misinformation are used by US Democrat establishment to justify censorship like national security by Republicans. I appreciate the Haftas without paywall. It's important in a subscriber model to understand the editor's ideologies. I recommend you evolve to be more open for ideology to be challenged and influenced. By own admission, the audience often is far more informed or erudite than some panelists. And for Abhinandan, please, I recommend a relook at US politics. Too mainstream Democrat. For example, your obsession with NPR. West is not a utopia. I live there now. Acknowledge the Western media biases. Example, it's pro-Israel narrative, and you must avoid subscribing to mainstream liberal narrative to retain objectivity.
So I think we should address the mistake we did. But
No.
we did not, just to clarify, we didn't just remove it. We also added a very clear apology right at the beginning of the
No, I
video.
think he agrees with that. He says
He's-
you should just have that and the clip as well.
And I don't know if you should have the wrong clip up with the correction, because if it's wrong, generally you tend to take it down and then put the correction there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
fact was
agree.
wrong, so we.
I
Why
agree.
would you
So-
want to
so-
amplify something that's wrong?
Yeah,
that you,
that-
No,
that
also
you
it's an
know?
audio podcast. It's not like they'll read the
Ah.
apology.
Also,
Exactly.
I think this gentleman's a Puritan. What's his name?
Anonymous.
Well, how would you know
Anonymous,
if he's a Puritan or not by his name?
No, I just want to address him by his
Okay.
name rather
Oh,
than just
I thought you
gentleman.
I think he's a gentleman, he's a Puritan.
No,
What's his
because
name?
he says to maintain objectivity, which is not an
Abhinandan
achievable
style.
pursuit. No, it's not an achievable pursuit. So I don't have an obsession with NPR, but I think it is the most wide variety of information, different little facets of information it gets. I consume way more media than I talk about here. So trust me, on that, I have no more time. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a utopia. See, again, all the words used are extreme.
Yes.
West is not a utopia. I've never made that claim. You must maintain objectivity. You can't.
But you are always this West fanboy, na? That's what he means. You're always like, oh, America is so great.
I don't think
Every
so.
time you come back
Are
from
you?
America, you're like, oh my God, dirty
What is-
India. ये गंदा लोग आता है मेरे
Donald Trump is
पास
my favorite guy.
इधर बदबू
अंग्रेज
आता
अपना
है
लगान।
इनसे
What? How can
Oh, Indian इतना dirty लोग
Mohammed Zubair, please fact check this because
That's what he's saying.
because
He's being like,
she's
you're just
gone on this rant. I'm just saying.
you're always, you come and then you have this face. You're Indians. So like,
Okay, so
that's why.
this is why we will remain where we are. Dude, it is because you live there. I understand it's a problem. You know, someone who lives in what do you call village in India and says, "Oh, Delhi जाना है." I'll say, "Delhi कोई utopia नहीं है. यहाँ भी सड़े हुए gutter हैं." But boss, उस गांव से बढ़िया है. Similarly, आप बोलो
मेरे गांव
हम
से
ये हैं,
बढ़िया
हम
है,
बहुत अच्छे हैं. अगर आपको लगता है कि भारत देश अमेरिका से बढ़िया है, तो आपको बधाई हो. आप यही रहो. आप देश को ऐसे ही रखो.
हम तो यही रह
अगले
रहे हैं.
500 साल तक ऐसे ही रखो. लेकिन मैं आपको ये बता दूं, आप कभी भी you will not be able to decide world events. You'll never be able to have a what do you call population which has the literacy rate that they do. You'll never be able to have a population that can move from an Obama to a Trump to a Biden like that. You will never have 80,000 rupees per capita income. But yes, we are the best. There's nothing wrong with us.
Okay, you
Ekdam
are-
number
No,
one.
no, let me do anonymous. Not that he has claimed, but I'm saying Indians, we are best. We are best. We are moon first. We are everything best.
Yes. We had internet in Mahabharat.
We are,
No,
हम
I
तो
think
बहुत
you
ही बढ़िया
guys
थे.
are too simplistic in your criticism of India. But anyway, that's another podcast altogether.
Okay, do we have time for more letters? I'll do one more.
Yeah, you can do
Yeah.
one more short one.
Okay, Akshara Pande says, hi, love your work. I won't waste word quota on niceties. Wondering, can you let us know the designation-wise journey of a journalist? In the corporate law world, a junior lawyer starts as an associate, moves to senior associate in 5 years, then principal associate after 3 more years, then junior partner in the next 3 or 4 years. Obviously, each level escalation has enormous salary increment and respect. Enormous salaries. I was curious about a journalist's career progression, both in terms of designation, salary, and respectability. As in, how much more reliable is he or she with a designation? So yeah.
Well, I mean, in the news world, journalism is different because in traditional media, there was a marketing department. So there was, AVP, you could become your sales head, team head, etc. In journalist side, there was senior correspondent. I don't
No,
know.
you have two sides. You have editorial and non-editorial. Non-editorial, as you said, the management side and someone who works on the advertisement and finances.
Or tech,
But
etc.
in editorial, again, you have the two streams. One is the desk, like Jayashree. So they move from desk towards the editorship, and then you have reporters, those who bring stories from the field. So they move from that side.
But
You
you
also
have like a
have- you
reporter,
also-
a staff reporter,
Ha.
a principal
Yeah.
This
correspondent,
is
like
yes.
Special
But you
correspondent and then
you also
bureau
have
chief
a
and-
tribe. I mean, some special people like Raj Kamal Jha, Sandeepan Deb, who studied at IIT, and then they studied at IIM, and then they came directly as editor. But
No.
they brilliant guys.
No,
I
sir,
mean,
you forget
brilliant
one
writer.
thing. I don't know about respectability, but salary and designation. Look at Sudhir Chaudhary, 15 crore.
No, that's not. No, technically, that's not a salary. That is the
Yeah.
size
That
of his
is not
contract.
Yes.
The size of the contract. So it is a work order or whatever contract given to a production house. How much
Yes.
of that is his salary? We don't know
And
that.
then I think he's
But
not a
his salary is
journalist.
in crores in Aaj Tak also. Was in Aaj Tak also.
And
We don't
I
know
would
that.
say
They
though
cut
that
we don't know
he's
that.
not a journalist though.
designation,
He's not a
with respect to
journalist.
designations and salaries in journalism, though, there is very little consistency. Many newspapers have their own sort of hierarchies. Like I know the Hindu's hierarchy is very different from the Times of India's, is very different from New Indian Express's, and so on. Also, there is no parity or whatever in terms of salary. Like
there is no
it's
parity.
not like there is a standard across the industry. There is no openness about it. So I don't think it works exactly the way it does in the legal world at all. And also the size of the salary is much lower.
No, but
than
And I was
corporate
kidding.
lawyers.
I was
Salary
kidding.
is market.
no, but
driven.
also I think again the mistake we make is when we say the legal world.
Yes, corporate law. I mean only
You know,
strictly corporate law,
the-
not
it-
obviously.
So
other
it
kinds
depends.
of-
Similarly, doctors, how much are doctors paid? It's very hard to say. I mean, if you're a
Yes.
doctor working in AIMS, are you a doctor working in, a primary health center in Begusarai? If you're, it's just, so
And-
it's very difficult to say, like, so what I'm assuming when I say journalist, they mean a journalist working for an an English daily or an English newspaper in Delhi or a metro. But even a journalist who is reporting for a much smaller newspaper out of
Municipal,
Haldwani is a journalist. So it's very difficult to. There's no answer to this question.
No, the hierarchy is also very loose. In,
No, the
editorial,
hierarchy I don't know, but on the economics of it, like I said, it's like asking how much the doctor paid. Which doctor are we talking about?
No, a
It's-
He's
freelance,
saying you can take an NL as an example.
like a.
Like if NL was the employer, then what is the hierarchy of journalists? in
So
We
terms of-
don't know.
here you have reporter, senior reporter, you have principal correspondent.
And I think our starting
special
salary
correspondent.
is what now? 25, 28?
Uh,
What is it?
21.
31 is the industry average. That's what.
Industry average as in the digital space.
No, newspapers and digital.
Yeah, you know, the
TV would be
saddest
more.
thing is that when I started in
TV would be
journalism
more.
15 years ago, starting salaries then were about like 18 to 20,000. And now I think even now, like hiring and all at ACJ, it's still about
31.
Those are the
25.
offers that are made on campus.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Let's get to the recommendations for the week before we wind up. Raman, so you want to go first?
Okay. We have been asked not to recommend our own stuff, but I think I need to
Recommend.
bring a spotlight on
Mm.
two things. This is about one I think is going to come out. Vikas, our colleague, he has done one explainer on 3 women who made some sense out of this chaos, and he said that we should not. I mean, they called for communal harmony. There is one woman in Nainital. Another woman is Narwal, whose husband was killed. And there's another woman in Kerala. So we made an explainer on that. Vikas has done it. I think we are going to soon publish that
Okay.
this week. So Vikas, and then we also did a video report on the woman in Nainital who spoke,
Yeah.
who was very daring, and
Very articulate.
Shella.
very articulate, Shella
Shella Negi.
Negi, and she faced so much trolling after that. So we have interviewed her. So the report by Anmol Pritam. So this is one recommendation. Second, we have seen the modern day trolling. All of us are aware of it, and we also get
Spent.
disturbed.
Mm.
But there is a very good movie on Netflix, 2023 movie, Wicked Little Letters, where in the when in maybe I think around in the 40s, 40s, how there is one woman who was trolled through the letters, and equally bad abuses that we hear now. So it's a good movie. I think
It's a super fun movie.
from UK. It's a comedy.
Right. Jayashree?
I have 3 recommendations. So first, I will recommend the Caravan's long piece on the Balakot strike of 2019 because it says, never before has warfare been conducted in an environment of so much willful lying by politicians and television channels and with so much brazen disregard for evidence. I think it's important reading also because it gives you good context. Like, it was also at the time a huge surgical strike. It was very important for Narendra Modi ahead of the election. It helped him win the election and so on. But I do think what we'll see over the next few days with Operation Sindoor will probably surpass the rhetoric around Balakot. So the piece is called The Balakot Misdirection by Sushant Singh. It is incredibly long, but you can just sort of skim it if you like. Also, the first story in our police impunity series is published by the News Minute. I thought it was very interesting because the story is that in Karnataka, a daily wage labourer was arrested by the police for murdering his wife. His wife had gone missing. The police produced a body and they said, you're guilty, whatever. So he spent 18 months in jail until one fine day last month, his wife got off a bus. She entered court and she was like, I'm alive. Basically, he had kept telling the police that his wife had run away and they refused to believe him. They produced this body without DNA evidence. They said, this is the body of his wife and whatever. They told the court, they filed a sort of fabricated charge sheet. It turned out the police didn't even try to find the wife. They just said that. So yes, this is how your police works.
Yeah.
It is an excellent story. It's called How to Manufacture a Murder. It's in the News Minute. Finally, I'm going to be very nostalgic. I used to really enjoy this writer called Nick Hornby. He's written a bunch of books, Fever Pitch and About a Boy, whatever.
High Fidelity.
Yes, and I recently revisited his book. It's called 31 Songs. It's a collection of essays. Each essay is about a song that he loves or had an emotional connect with or whatever. So the thing is that 20 years ago, a reviewer compared the book to like a beloved older brother giving you a CD and saying, this is why you need to like this music. And it is a very good comparison, but it's not hugely insightful, but it's also just really nostalgic, enjoyable writing about a man's immense fondness for music and for songs. And it reminded me of how I, long ago, used to think that I would be a music journalist, very similar to that Rolling Stone journalist depicted in the movie Almost Famous. I didn't, but it's a very nice memory. So you should read this book and you may also rediscover your own nice memories.
Yeah, I want to read it.
Yes.
Right.
Nice, light-hearted reading.
I remember I read About a Boy.
You should read Fever Pitch because it's about football. I mean, specifically it's about his love for Arsenal, but generally it's a book about why you love football.
Well, then he must have had his heart broken night before last.
Yeah. Mine too.
Manisha.
So I'm reading this book, Tariq Pe Justice, by Chitrakshi Jain and Prashant Reddy, I'll be interviewing them next week. Quite a fascinating book with very interesting takes on the lowest rung of our judiciary.
Yeah, Shardool, your recommendation?
So my first recommendation is the second part of Hindutva project, Prateek's report from Indore. And like, you have to see it to believe it. That there's one guy in it, you laugh and be horrified at the same time. Like, in my eyes, he's the personification of the phrase, like, fantasy abandoned by reason creates impossible monsters. He's that. You have to see it to believe it. He's crazy.
Right.
So see that. Second is a book by Christine Fair, and I like this analyst of Pakistan because every Pakistani army person hates her. So her book's name is Fighting to the End, Pakistan's Army's Way of War. She wrote it sometime in 2013 or 14. It's a very insightful book, and most of the stuff is taken from ISPR website and Green Book because they didn't think she could read Urdu. And she did. And the third is, we were talking about World War II and how long-term strategies are employed even by bad actors, but how nations act. The seminal documentary of World War II, The World at War, and it's narrated by Laurence Olivier. It was made by BBC in 70s, and that is the last documentary which had people alive from World War II. So its appendices also had interview of Hitler's girlfriend. It's beautiful and harrowing at the same time.
Right. My recommendations are two. I think a fantastic explainer of the importance and the mechanics of the Indo-UK deal. I explained in the Daily Brief podcasts. It is, I think, a part of Zeroda's podcast series also. But it's this boy, something Bansal. He does a fantastic job of explaining the simplifying, in chote mein what's happening. And the second is the interview of Joe Biden on BBC. It's an interesting take of, a lot of been said that how insane he was, that, how he was completely out of it. And to an extent, it's true. And, even at that age, you can make a lot of sense. And he has kind of compressed a lot of things that we know about Trump in one sit-down interview. I just think it's a very compelling watch. It may not be very informative, but it was very watchable. So I'll wind up now with an appeal to pay to keep news free, fund our journalism so that we can serve you with your support rather than serve advertisers with their support. Thank you, Shardool. Thank you, Manisha. Thank you, Raman sir. Thank you to our wonderful producer, Priyali.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. Be
Bye-bye.
safe.